The fire crackled. The wine flowed, and for a moment, it looked like any other holiday in the charming lakeside town of Maple Ridge, Vermont. Until the toast. "To Vanessa," their father said, raising his glass. "A promotion well earned. You make this family proud." Beside him, Vanessa beamed. And across the table, Harper Lane, 30, stayed silent, just as she always had. The quieter sister, the complicated one, the one who never measured up to Vanessa's curated perfection. But that night, Harper didn't swallow it. She swallowed her wine instead. And said it. "She's sleeping with her boss." Forks stopped mid-air. Laughter died. Vanessa's smile faltered for the first time in years, because Harper wasn't guessing. She knew. What follows isn't just a family unraveling. It's a reckoning, a psychological spiral where masks fall, loyalties fracture, and Harper finally speaks the truth no one ever wanted to hear. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing at the dinner table is the sister who's been quiet too long. Subscribe now to follow Harper Lane's long overdue awakening, because when the golden sister is hiding secrets, the quiet one becomes the storm. And this holiday, the truth was served hot. Chapter 1. The Quiet Sister Speaks. The Lane family cabin had stood on the shores of Lake Champlain for 4 generations, its weathered cedar shingles and wide front porch a fixture in Maple Ridge, Vermont, since the 1930s. Tonight, golden light spilled from its windows onto the snow-covered ground, and smoke curled from the chimney into the clear December night. Inside, the annual Lane family Christmas dinner was underway. Harper Lane stood at the kitchen counter, methodically slicing a sourdough loaf for dinner. At 30, she moved with practiced efficiency. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her slim frame draped in a forest green sweater that brought out flecks of emerald in her hazel eyes. There was a quietness to Harper that people often mistook for shyness, but it was something else entirely, a watchfulness, an absorption of everything around her. From the dining room came peals of laughter, her sister's laughter, bright and practiced like everything else about Vanessa Lane. "Harper, honey, we're waiting on that bread," her mother called from the dining room. "Coming, Mom," Harper replied, arranging the slices in a basket lined with a festive napkin. She paused at the kitchen doorway, taking in the tableau before her. The antique oak dining table gleamed under the light of the chandelier her grandfather had installed in the 1960s. Pine boughs and red candles formed a centerpiece, flanked by the Lane family china, only used at Christmas and Easter. At the head of the table sat her father, Richard Lane, his silver hair neatly combed, his ruddy face flushed with the pride he always exhibited when Vanessa was home. And there was Vanessa, 34, golden-haired, and glowing in a cream cashmere dress that probably cost more than Harper's monthly rent. Beside her sat her latest boyfriend, Derek, a management consultant with perfect teeth and a habit of touching Vanessa's arm whenever he spoke. "There she is," Richard Lane boomed when Harper entered, "always hiding in the kitchen." "Someone has to make sure dinner happens," Harper replied with a small smile, setting the bread basket on the table. Harper's mother, Carolina, elegant at 62 with her silver-streaked blonde bob and understated pearl earrings, shot her younger daughter a look. "Your sister offered to help, Harper." "I'm sure she did," Harper murmured, taking her seat. Vanessa had offered to help in the same way she always did, a cursory, "Need any help?" while already settling in the living room with a glass of wine and their father's undivided attention. Vanessa leaned across the table, her diamond earrings catching the light. "This all looks amazing, Mom and Harper. The bread smells divine." "It's just bread," Harper said. But she caught her mother's warning glance and added, "But thanks." Dinner proceeded as it always had in the Lane household. Richard dominated the conversation, telling local stories that everyone except Derek had heard before. Caroline asked polite questions about everyone's work. Vanessa's anecdotes about her job at Meridian Partners, a prestigious marketing firm in Boston, were met with rapt attention. Harper spoke when spoken to, which wasn't often. "So, Derek," Richard said, refilling the man's wine glass, "what do you think of our little Vermont Christmas? But different from your Boston celebrations, I imagine." Derek smiled, his arm casually draped over the back of Vanessa's chair. "It's charming, sir. Vanessa talks about these family traditions all the time. I can see why she was so eager to share them with me." "Harper, fuck," he urged to roll her eyes. Derek was the third boyfriend Vanessa had brought to Christmas in 5 years. Each one seemed interchangeable with the last, polished, professional, and perfectly forgettable. "The Lane family Christmas is sacred," Richard declared. "Caroline and I started these traditions when the girls were tiny, and now," he looked proudly at Vanessa, "now they're bringing their own loved ones into the fold." The implication that Harper had failed to contribute to this family expansion hung in the air. At 30, she remained single, a fact her mother referred to as her extended independence phase. "Harper hasn't brought anyone home since college," Vanessa said with a light laugh. "Remember that guy with the motorcycle? Dad nearly had a heart attack." "Jason," Harper said quietly. "His name was Jason." "Was it? Gosh, I barely remember him." "You wouldn't," Harper replied. "You were too busy with your own drama that Christmas." A brief tension flickered across the table. Caroline quickly changed the subject. "Vanessa, you haven't told us about your big news yet. Richard's been bursting to hear all about it." Vanessa straightened in her chair, her perfect smile widening. "Well, I was saving it for dessert, but—" She looked around the table, clearly savoring the moment. "I've been promoted to executive creative director at Meridian." Richard let out a whoop that seemed out of place coming from a 65-year-old retired accountant. "That's my girl." "Vanessa, that's wonderful news," Caroline beamed. "It's a significant step up," Vanessa continued, her voice taking on the practiced modesty Harper knew so well. "I'll be overseeing all creative output for the East Coast offices. It comes with a substantial raise, too." "And a corner office," Derek added, squeezing her shoulder. "When did you find out?" "Last week," Vanessa replied. "James called me into his office on Friday afternoon. I thought he wanted to go over the Harrington campaign, but instead he offered me the promotion." Her cheeks flushed slightly. "He said I was indispensable to the company." "James." Harper felt something cold settle in her stomach at the mention of his name. Richard stood up, raising his wineglass. The firelight caught in the ruby liquid as he held it high. "I think this calls for a toast." Everyone at the table reached for their glasses. Harper's fingers closed around the cool stem of hers, her knuckles whitening slightly. "To Vanessa," their father said, his voice thick with emotion. "A promotion well earned. You make this family proud." Vanessa beamed, her perfectly arranged features glowing in the candlelight. Caroline dabbed at the corner of her eye with her napkin. Derek's hand rested possessively on Vanessa's shoulder. "And Harper?" Harper stayed silent, just as she had always had. The quieter sister, the complicated one, the one who never measured up to Vanessa's curated perfection. But tonight, something shifted. Perhaps it was the weight of too many Christmas dinners exactly like this one. Perhaps it was the memory of how her father's eyes had never quite lit up the same way when looking at her. Or perhaps it was the memory of what she had seen 3 months ago on a surprise visit to Boston to see her sister. Harper didn't swallow it this time.
She swallowed her wine instead, and then she said it. "She's sleeping with her boss." The words hung in the air like icicles, sharp, cold, and dangerous. Forks stopped mid-air. The crackling fire suddenly seemed too loud in the silence. Vanessa's smile faltered for the first time in years, her perfect composure cracking just enough for Harper to see the panic beneath. "Harper?" Caroline gasped. "What did you just say?" Richard's voice had dropped to a dangerous octave. Harper set down her wineglass carefully. "I said Vanessa is sleeping with her boss, with James." She looked directly at her sister. "That's how she got the promotion." Derek's hand had frozen on Vanessa's shoulder. "What?" Vanessa let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. That's ridiculous. Harper, what are you doing?" "Telling the truth," Harper replied. Her heart was pounding, but her voice remained steady. "I saw you, Vanessa. In September, when I came to surprise you for your birthday, I saw you leaving his apartment at 6 in the morning, in the same clothes you'd worn the night before." "You're making this up," she hissed, but her face had drained of color. Harper shook her head. "I waited outside his building for 3 hours, convinced there must be some explanation. Then I followed you both to the office, watched how you carefully arrived 10 minutes apart, saw how he touched your lower back when he thought no one was looking." "Enough." Richard slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "Harper, apologize to your sister right now." Harper turned to her father, 30 years of being the lesser daughter hardening into resolve. "No." "What did you say?" "I said no. I won't apologize for telling the truth. Not anymore." Caroline was clutching her napkin to her chest. "Please, let's not do this at Christmas dinner." "When should we do it, Mom? When should we acknowledge that your perfect daughter isn't so perfect after all?" Derek cleared his throat. "I think I should sit down," Vanessa snapped at him. Then, composing herself, she turned to her family. "This is absurd. Harper's always been jealous of my success. Now she's inventing stories to undermine me at what should be a celebration." "I'm not inventing anything," Harper said. "James Woodward is married with 2 children. His wife Rebecca volunteers at the Children's Hospital. You've met her at company functions, haven't you, Vanessa? All while sleeping with her husband to advance your career." Vanessa's eyes glittered dangerously. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Harper pulled out her phone. "Should I call James right now, see what he has to say about his indispensable employee?" For a moment, no one moved. The fire popped loudly in the grate, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, snow had begun to fall again, large flakes visible through the windows, adding another layer of silence to the world beyond the cabin walls. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need some air." She stalked from the room, leaving a vacuum of tension behind her. Derek looked around the table uncertainly before following her. Richard fixed Harper with a stare that would have withered her in the past. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Harper met his gaze steadily. "Something I should have done a long time ago." As she rose from the table, the weight of decades seemed to lift from her shoulders. The quiet sister had finally spoken, and now that she had started, she wasn't sure she could stop. If you're gripped by this family drama and want to discover what happens when long-buried truths finally come to light, don't forget to hit subscribe. Will Harper's revolution tear the Lane family apart, or will it finally force them to confront the reality behind their perfect facade? Subscribe now to find out in Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Fracture Lines.
The ancient porch swing creaked rhythmically as Harper pushed against the weathered floorboards with her toe. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she welcomed it, a sharp contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. Snow continued to fall, each flake catching briefly in the golden light spilling from the windows before disappearing into the darkness beyond the cabin walls. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need some air." She stalked from the room, leaving a vacuum of tension behind her. Derek looked around the table uncertainly before following her. Richard fixed Harper with a stare that would have withered her in the past. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Harper met his gaze steadily. "Something I should have done a long time ago." Caroline sighed, settling beside her daughter on the swing. For a moment they sat in silence, their breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "Is it true?" Caroline finally asked, her voice barely audible above the creak of the swing. Harper looked at her mother, really looked at her. The fine lines around her eyes, the slight tremble in her hands that she tried to hide by clasping them tightly in her lap, the weight of decades of family secrets in the slump of her shoulders. "Yes," Harper said simply, "it's true." Caroline closed her eyes briefly. "How long have you known?"
Since September, but I've suspected for longer. The way she talked about him, the sudden business trips that coincided with his travel schedule. Harper pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "I didn't want to believe it either, Mom. Your father is..." Caroline trailed off, glancing back at the house. "Furious? Disappointed? Take your pick." Harper's laugh was hollow. "He's never expected much from me anyway. This just confirms what he's always thought, that I'm the troublemaker, the one who doesn't fit the Lane family image." "That's not fair, Harper. Isn't it? When was the last time Dad proposed a toast to my accomplishments? When was the last time either of you really asked about my life? I published a book last year, Mom. A small press, but still a real book with my name on it. Did either of you even read it?" Caroline's silence was answer enough. Inside the house, raised voices could be heard, Richard and Vanessa locked in conversation. The perfect father and his perfect daughter managing the crisis the imperfect daughter had created. "Your sister works very hard," Caroline said weakly. "So do I. I work 60-hour weeks at the publishing house. I volunteer teaching creative writing at the community center. I've built a life I'm proud of, but it's never been enough, has it? Not compared to Vanessa's glamorous career and perfect boyfriends, and now her impressive promotion." The last words carried a bitter edge. Caroline reached out, covering Harper's cold hand with her own. "We've been unfair to you." The simple admission, so unexpected, momentarily robbed Harper of her carefully constructed anger. "I don't expect sudden understanding," Harper said after a moment. "I just couldn't sit through another Christmas watching everyone fawn over Vanessa's achievements without acknowledging how she got them." The front door banged open again. Derek emerged, his expensive coat buttoned hastily, a weekend bag clutched in one hand. He nodded awkwardly at Harper and Caroline before hurrying to his car parked in the driveway. "Looks like someone's cutting the family Christmas short," Harper observed as the headlights swept across the snow-covered lawn and Derek's car disappeared down the long driveway. "He seems to be taking it well," Caroline remarked dryly, surprising Harper with a hint of humor. Inside, something shattered, the sound of breaking glass followed by Richard's voice shouting, "That's enough!" Caroline winced. "I should go back in." "Always the peacekeeper," Harper said, but without rancor. "Someone has to be." Caroline stood, straightening her sweater in a gesture so familiar it made Harper's heart ache. Before going inside, she paused. "I did read your book, Harper. Twice, actually. I keep it on my nightstand." Harper looked up, startled. "It was beautiful," Caroline continued softly. I didn't know how to tell you that. I've never been good with words. Not like you."
She slipped back inside, leaving Harper alone with the snow and the swing and this small, unexpected gift. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight when Harper finally returned inside. The house was quiet, the dinner table cleared, the fire reduced to glowing embers. A single lamp burned in the living room, where Richard sat alone, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. "Dad," Harper acknowledged, pausing in the doorway. Richard didn't look up. "I thought you might have left too." "Without my car? In a snowstorm? Give me some credit for basic survival skills." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before fading. "Your sister is upstairs. She doesn't want to speak to you." "I figured as much." Harper moved to the fireplace, adding another log. The bark caught quickly, flames licking upward. "Where's Nom?" "Bed. She takes a sleeping pill on Christmas. Did you know that?" "Ever since you girls were teenagers. Says it's the only way she can cope with the stress of making everything perfect." Harper hadn't known that. It seemed there were many things about her family she hadn't known, or had chosen not to see. "Why did you do it, Harper?" Richard asked, finally looking at her. "Why tonight, of all nights?" Harper settled into the armchair across from him. "Because it was wrong. Because Vanessa shouldn't be rewarded for behavior that hurt other people." "And you appointed yourself judge and jury?" "Someone had to. You and Mom certainly weren't going to acknowledge it." Richard's eyebrows rose. "So you knew before tonight, and you waited for the most dramatic moment to reveal it." Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You could have spoken to your sister privately. You could have raised your concerns with your mother or me. Instead, you chose to humiliate Vanessa in front of her boyfriend at Christmas dinner." Put that way, it did sound calculated. Harper shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't plan it. It happened."
Things like that don't just happen, Harper. Not with you. Richard set down his glass. You've always been deliberate, even as a child. You think before you act. It's what makes you a good writer. The casual acknowledgement of her career caught Harper off guard. You think I'm a good writer? Of course I do. Richard looked surprised. I've read everything you've published. Harper stared at him. You never said anything. Did I need to? I assumed you knew. A laugh escaped Harper, surprising them both. Dad, how would I know if you never told me? Richard frowned. I come to your readings. What? Harper straightened. No, you don't. I sit in the back, leave before the signing portion. He shrugged at her incredulous expression. I didn't want to distract you. Harper was speechless. All those bookstore events, all those nervous readings to small crowds, her father had been there, silently supporting her while she believed he was indifferent. Does Vanessa know? Harper finally asked. About her boss, I mean, that you and Mom know? Richard sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. Your sister's personal choices are her own business. They're not just personal choices when they affect her career, when they give her an unfair advantage. Life isn't fair, Harper. I thought you would have learned that by now. That doesn't mean we should celebrate the unfairness. Harper leaned forward. What about James's wife? What about his kids? Don't they deserve better? Richard was silent for a long moment. When did you become so righteous? When did you become so willing to overlook the truth? Harper countered. A floorboard creaked overhead. Both of them glanced up at the ceiling, then back at each other. You should talk to her. Not tonight, but before you leave. Harper nodded, though the prospect of facing Vanessa again made her stomach tighten. I will. Richard finished his scotch and stood. I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late brooding. It's bad for your complexion. It was such an unexpectedly fatherly thing to say that Harper almost smiled. Good night, Dad. After he left, Harper remained by the fire, watching the flames dance over the logs. The house creaked and settled around her, familiar sounds from her childhood. How many Christmas nights had she spent in this room,
reading by the fire while everyone else slept. How many secret dreams had she nursed here, in the shadows of her sister's brighter light?
A soft noise made her turn. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her perfect makeup washed away, her golden hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. In her flannel pajamas, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the sister Harper had idolized as a child. "I thought everyone was asleep," Vanessa said, her voice hoarse. "Just me," Harper replied. "The family disappointment, keeping watch." Vanessa flinched. "Is that what you think? That they're disappointed in you? Aren't they?" "No," Vanessa moved into the room, curling up on the couch. "They're in awe of you, Harper. Always have been." Harper laughed incredulously. "Now you're just being cruel." "I'm being honest. You're the smart one, the talented one, the one with actual gifts. I'm just good at playing the game." "The game got you pretty far," Harper observed. "Did it?" Vanessa's voice was hollow. "Derek's gone. Left me a text from the road saying he needs space to reevaluate. And James," she swallowed hard, "James will never leave his wife. I've always known that." "Then why?" "Because I'm not you," Vanessa burst out. "I don't have your talent or your brain or your quiet confidence. All I've ever had is my ability to make people like me, to give them what they want so they'll give me what I need." The raw honesty of the admission hung between them like smoke. "I never knew you felt that way," Harper said quietly. "How could you? We've been performing our assigned roles for so long, I'm not sure either of us knows how to stop. The perfect daughter and the rebel, the beauty and the brain. We've been those people for so long." Harper studied her sister's face in the firelight, seeing past the perfect features to the uncertainty beneath. "What happens now?" "I don't know." Vanessa attempted a shaky smile. "That's the terrifying part. I've never not known what comes next." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in a clean, blank whiteness. Tomorrow they would have to navigate this new terrain between them. Tomorrow they would begin to discover who they might be outside the roles they'd been assigned. But tonight they sat in silence by the dying fire, two sisters seeing each other clearly for perhaps the first time.
Chapter 3. New Traditions. Morning light filtered through the frost-covered windows, casting prismatic patterns across the kitchen floor. Harper stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease while the coffee maker gurgled in the background. She'd always been an early riser, even on Christmas morning. "Something smells good," Caroline said, entering the kitchen in her robe and slippers. She paused, taking in the scene, the table set for breakfast, fresh orange juice in the crystal pitcher, pancakes warming in the oven. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to. Tradition, right? Christmas morning pancakes?" Caroline smiled faintly. "Your father used to make them when you girls were little. Before he decided Vanessa was the only one worth making an effort for." "That's not fair," Caroline said, but without conviction. She poured herself coffee, adding cream and sugar. "He loves you both. Differently." "Yes," Caroline admitted after a pause. "Differently. But love isn't measured in equal portions, Harper. It's not meant to be identical." Harper flipped another pancake, considering this. "I know, She trailed off, unsure how to articulate the hollow feeling that had accompanied her through childhood and into adulthood, the sense of being perpetually in Vanessa's shadow. "What do you wish?" Richard asked from the doorway, already dressed in his Christmas sweater and slacks. Harper turned, spatula in hand. "I wish we could all be honest with each other, like real families are." "Real families?" Richard repeated, pouring himself coffee. "As opposed to what? Fictional ones?" "As opposed to families that pretend everything is perfect when it isn't. Families that ignore problems instead of addressing them." Richard took a long sip of his coffee, regarding his younger daughter over the rim of his mug. Like the problem you so dramatically highlighted at dinner last night. Before Harper could respond, Vanessa appeared, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. Her eyes were puffy, her complexion less radiant than usual. She looked, Harper thought, more human this way, less like a glossy magazine image, and more like the sister she remembered from childhood. "Pancakes?" Harper offered, holding up the spatula like a peace offering. Vanessa nodded, moving to the refrigerator for orange juice. The kitchen fell into an uneasy silence as the four Lanes settled around the table. Outside, the world was white and pristine, last night's snow having transformed the landscape into something new and unmarked. "I'm sorry about Derek," Caroline said finally, breaking the silence.
Vanessa flinched slightly. "Don't be. He was—" She paused, searching for words. "He was another prop in my perfect life performance." Richard looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Vanessa said, cutting her pancakes with precision, "that I've been performing for so long I'm not sure I know how to just be anymore." She glanced at Harper. "Unlike some people at this table." Harper set down her fork. "That's not fair. I perform too, just different roles. The struggling artist, the truth teller, the overlooked daughter," Vanessa countered. "Girls," Caroline warned, an echo of decades of mealtime interventions. But Harper wasn't backing down. "At least my roles aren't based on deception." "Aren't they?" Vanessa leaned forward. "You've crafted your identity around being the antithesis of me, the authentic one, the one with integrity. But last night wasn't about integrity, was it? It was about finally getting attention." The accusation struck too close to home. Harper felt her cheeks flush. "That's not true." "Isn't it? You could have confronted me privately. Instead, you chose the moment of my celebration to expose me." Vanessa's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "You wanted to see me fall." The kitchen fell silent again. Richard and Caroline exchanged glances, a wordless communication honed over 40 years of marriage. "Perhaps," Richard said carefully, "you both have points worth considering." Harper stared at her father, surprised by this diplomatic intervention. It was so unlike him to avoid taking sides, particularly Vanessa's side. "What about you, Dad?" Harper asked, seizing the moment. "Where do you stand on Vanessa's methods of advancement?" Richard set down his coffee mug deliberately. "I stand with my daughters, both of them, flawed as they may be." "That's not an answer," Harper pressed. "It's the only one you're getting," Richard replied firmly. "I'm not going to condemn either of you. That's not my role." "Then what is your role?" Vanessa asked, her voice smaller than Harper could ever remember hearing it. Richard looked between his daughters, something shifting in his expression, a softening, a recognition. "To love you, to support you, to help you become your best selves, whatever that means." He cleared his throat. "And, perhaps, to acknowledge when I've failed at those things." Caroline reached across the table, covering her husband's hand with her own. "We both have things to answer for." "Like what?" Harper asked, hardly daring to breathe in the face of this unexpected vulnerability. "Like favoring Vanessa's achievements because they were easier to understand," Richard admitted. "Like overlooking your talents, Harper, because they didn't fit my narrow definition of success. And like allowing these patterns to continue unchallenged for decades," Caroline added softly, "even when I saw how they hurt you both." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to overshadow you, Harper." "I know," Harper said, and was surprised to find she meant it. "And I never meant to resent you for it. But I did. I do sometimes." "I envy you," Vanessa confessed. "Your certainty, your talent, the way you've built a life that's truly yours.
not one designed to please others. Harper stared at her sister, this golden girl she'd spent a lifetime believing had everything. My life is a mess half the time. I live in a tiny apartment, my car is 12 years old, my career barely pays the bills. But it's real, Vanessa insisted. Everything about my life is... She gestured helplessly. Constructed, even this promotion. Her voice broke. Especially this promotion. So what are you going to do about it? Richard asked, surprising them all with the directness of the question. Vanessa looked at him, momentarily thrown. What do you mean? I mean, now that we're all being honest, what's your next step? Will you keep seeing this James person? Keep the promotion? The question hung in the air between them. Harper realized she was holding her breath, waiting for her sister's answer. Vanessa looked down at her half-eaten pancakes, then back up at her family. I don't know, she said simply. For the first time in my life, I really don't know what comes next. That's okay, Caroline said, reaching across to squeeze her elder daughter's hand. Not knowing is part of being human. It's terrifying, Vanessa admitted. Yes, Harper agreed, but it's also where the real stuff happens. The unexpected, the authentic. Richard nodded slowly. Your mother and I didn't know what we were doing half the time when raising you girls. We just pretended we did. This confession, so unexpected from their confident, authoritative father, startled both sisters into laughter. You faked it? Vanessa asked incredulously. Of course we did, Caroline replied, smiling. Everyone does. That's the great secret of adulthood.
The tension that had gripped the kitchen began to dissipate, replaced by something fragile but real. A new understanding, perhaps, or at least the beginning of one. After breakfast, while Caroline and Richard washed dishes, Harper and Vanessa bundled up and stepped outside. The world was silent under its blanket of snow, the lake a sheet of hammered silver in the distance. I am sorry, Harper said as they crunched across the pristine white expanse of the front yard, for how I did it. Not for what I said, but for how I said it. Vanessa nodded, her breath clouding in the cold air. I know. And I'm sorry too, for a lot of things. They walked in silence to the end of the driveway, where the Lane family mailbox stood, capped with a perfect dome of snow. What happens when we go back to our real lives? Harper asked. Do we just pretend this never happened? Vanessa considered this, squinting against the bright winter sunlight. I don't think I can pretend anymore. That's the problem. She looked at her sister. I'm going to end it with James, and I'm going to tell HR about our relationship. You'll lose the promotion. Probably, Vanessa agreed. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I need to find out what I can achieve on my own merits. That's brave, Harper said, meaning it. Terrifying, Vanessa corrected her, but necessary. She brushed snow from the mailbox absently. What about you? What happens when you go back to New York? Harper thought about her small but beloved apartment in Brooklyn, her desk by the window where she wrote early in the mornings, the publishing house where she worked, the novel she was secretly writing in the pre-dawn hours. I think I need to stop hiding, stop playing small, because I'm afraid of failing, of not measuring up. To me? Vanessa asked quietly. To everyone, Harper admitted. But yes, to you too. Vanessa shook her head. I've never been as perfect as you think I am. And I've never been as brave as you think I am. They stood together in the snow, two sisters seeing each other clearly at last. New tradition? Vanessa suggested. Actual honesty at Christmas dinner? Mom would have a heart attack. She'll adapt. We all will. Vanessa linked her arm through Harper's. "Come on, let's go open presents and see if Dad remembered that you prefer books to scarves this year." As they walked back to the house, Harper felt something shift inside her, a loosening of an old, tight knot she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten it was there. The truth, once spoken, had not destroyed them. It had cracked them open, yes, but perhaps that was what they had needed all along. Inside, the fire crackled in the grate. Caroline was arranging presents under the tree, while Richard poured eggnog into the family's heirloom crystal cups. The scene was familiar, the same Christmas tableau they'd enacted for decades, but something fundamental had changed. The script had been rewritten, the roles redistributed. As they settled around the tree, passing presents and exclaiming over gifts, Harper caught her father watching her with an expression she'd rarely seen directed her way, a mixture of pride and curiosity, as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time. "I have something for you," he said, when the main gift exchange was complete. "Something I've been saving." He disappeared into his study and returned with a small wrapped package. Harper accepted it, surprised by its weight. "Open it," Richard encouraged, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. Harper carefully removed the wrapping paper to reveal a wooden box, its surface worn smooth with age. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a vintage fountain pen, a Mont Blanc, its gold nib gleaming in the firelight. "It was my father's. He used it to write letters home during the war, and before that it belonged to his father, who was a journalist in Boston." He cleared his throat. "It should belong to a real writer." Harper looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Dad, You don't have to say anything," Richard said quickly. "Just use it. Write something that matters." Vanessa watched the exchange with a small smile, no trace of jealousy in her expression. She caught Harper's eye and nodded slightly, an acknowledgement, an approval. Later, as the day waned, and the light outside faded to the purple-blue of winter twilight, the four Lanes sat together in the living room. No one mentioned promotions or bosses or revelations. They simply existed together in the quiet aftermath of truth, each absorbing what it might mean for their future. "I was thinking," Caroline said, breaking the comfortable silence, "that perhaps next Christmas we might do something different." "Different how?" Richard asked, looking up from his book. "I don't know. Maybe we rent a cabin in Vermont, or go somewhere warm for a change." I looked between her daughters. "What do you think? A new tradition for our evolving family." "I'd like that," Vanessa said. "Me too," Harper agreed. As night fell over Maple Ridge, snow began to fall again, adding fresh layers to the world outside. Inside, the Lane family remained in their circle of light and warmth, changed by the truths they had spoken, uncertain of what came next, but finally, perhaps for the first time, facing it together. Harper looked around at her family, imperfect, complicated, wounded, and healing, and realized that sometimes the most dangerous thing at the dinner table wasn't the sister who'd been quiet too long. Sometimes it was the truth itself. And sometimes that was exactly what everyone needed. If this story of family dynamics, uncomfortable truths, and healing resonated with you, please hit subscribe now to support our channel. Have you ever been in Harper's position, holding on to a truth that needed to be spoken? Or have you been Vanessa, maintaining a facade that eventually had to crack? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story matters to our community. Subscribe today for more powerful narratives that explore the complex realities of family relationships and personal growth.